Welcome to He versus She. I'm Aria.
And I'm Leo. Today we are discussing a distinction that is so subtle, yet so profound, that it defines whether you are merely surviving in English or truly mastering it.
You know, Leo, I was at a gallery opening in New York recently, and I overheard someone tell an artist, "I really listened to your voice in this painting." The artist smiled politely, but you could see the confusion. The speaker meant they heard the artist's message, but they used listen in a way that sounded like they were literally waiting for the canvas to speak.
That is a classic example of what I call linguistic static. It's an embarrassing mistake because hear and listen are often taught as synonyms in basic textbooks, but in the real world, in professional boardrooms in London or social circles in Toronto, using the wrong one makes you sound like a passenger in the language rather than the driver.
Exactly. Most people think they're the same because they both involve the ears, but one is a passive biological function and the other is a deliberate intellectual act.
Mastering this isn't just about grammar, it's about social intelligence. If you tell your boss, "I didn't hear you," versus "I wasn't listening," you're sending two completely different messages. One is an accident, the other is a career risk.
Today, we're going to bridge that gap. We're going deep into the psychology of sound. This is hear versus listen. Let's deconstruct the invisible boundary.
Let's start with the hard logic, Aria. Evolutionarily speaking, hear is our radar. It's an involuntary sense. Your ears are always on. You hear the rain. You hear a car horn. You hear the hum of your refrigerator. You don't choose to do it. It just happens to you. It's a perception of sound.
I love that. It happens to you, while listen is something you give. In fact, in English, we almost always say listen to. That preposition to is like a bridge. You are actively projecting your attention toward the sound.
Precisely. Hear is the event. Listen is the action. Think of it like see versus watch. You can see a bird by accident, but you watch a movie by choice.
But here is where it gets tricky for our listeners. Leo, if I'm in a noisy cafe and I can't hear you, am I also not listening?
Great question. In that scenario, your listening is at 100%. Your brain is trying to focus, but the hearing, the biological reception, is blocked by the noise. So you would say, "I'm listening, but I can't hear you." It shows that your intent is there, but the signal is weak.
And that's a powerful nuance. If a student tells a teacher, "I didn't hear the instructions," the teacher might repeat them. But if the student says, "I wasn't listening," well, that's an invitation for a lecture on discipline.
True. Also, hear often refers to the suddenness of a sound. You hear a bang. You don't listen to a bang because it's over before you can choose to pay attention. Listen requires duration. You listen to music. You listen to a speech. You listen to a podcast like this one.
So hear is a point in time, while listen is a line through time.
That's a brilliant way to visualize it. Hear is a dot. Listen is a path. But as we move forward, we're going to see how these dots and paths change when we talk about authority, empathy, and even legal contexts.
This is just the surface. When we come back, we're going to dive into the sophisticated syntax, the danger zone where even advanced speakers trip up, and how the Atlantic Ocean changes the way we use these words. Stay tuned.
We're moving from the basic biological function into the actual mechanics of the English language. Aria, let's talk about transitivity, a scary word for a very simple concept that causes a lot of headaches.
Don't scare them off with the linguistics jargon yet, Leo. But you're right. The biggest technical difference is that hear is a direct verb. You hear something. Listen, however, is almost always an intransitive verb that needs a bridge, the preposition to.
Exactly. You hear a noise, direct, but you listen to a noise. That to is non-negotiable. I often hear advanced learners say, "I am listening the radio." Thoughtfully, it sounds like a gear is missing in the engine. It's listening to.
But let's look at the psychological shift. When we use hear in a professional setting, it often implies to be informed. If I say, "Leo, I hear you're moving to London," I'm not saying I physically heard the sound of your moving boxes. I'm saying I've received the information.
Right. In that context, hear is about the result of communication. But if I say, Leo, listen to me, it's a command for focus. In many cultures, listening is synonymous with obeying. If a mother says to her child, you never listen, she doesn't mean the child is deaf. She means the child isn't following instructions.
That's a fascinating layer. Hear is about receiving data. Listen is about processing and responding to that data. In a boardroom, you might hear a proposal, but your boss wants to know if you were actually listening to the strategy behind it. One is passive acceptance. The other is active engagement.
Now, Aria, let's cross the Atlantic. While the grammar remains the same, the flavor of these words changes between London and New York.
Oh, absolutely. In the UK, there's a very common phrase, listen out for. For example, listen out for the doorbell. It implies a state of waiting for a sound that hasn't happened yet.
Whereas in the US and Canada, we're much more likely to say, keep an ear out for the doorbell. We treat the ear as a separate sensory tool that we keep out like a net.
Also, I've noticed in British English, listen is often used as a filler or a way to grab attention before a difficult statement. Seriously, listen, I don't think this is going to work. It's a bit more forceful, a bit more direct.
True. In North America, we tend to soften that. We might say, look, I hear what you're saying, but notice how we use look and hear there together. We use a visual verb to grab attention and an auditory verb to show empathy before we disagreed.
It's almost as if the British use listen as a call to authority, while North Americans use hear as a tool for negotiation. I hear you has become a huge corporate buzzword in the US. It means I acknowledge your feelings.
This leads us straight into the danger zone. These are the traps that can make an executive sound like a beginner in an instant. Aria, what's the #1 mistake you hear?
It's definitely the stative verb trap. In English, we don't usually use hear in the continuous form when we talk about the physical sense. You don't say, I am hearing a strange noise right now.
Correct. It's always, I hear a noise or I can hear a noise. If you say, I am hearing voices, people might think you need a psychiatrist. Hearing voices is a very specific idiom for auditory hallucinations.
Exactly. Unless you're a judge hearing a case in court, keep hear in the simple present. On the other hand, listen loves the continuous form. I am listening to you, I was listening to the music. Because it's an action, it has a duration.
Another danger zone item is confusing hear from with listen to. If you say, I listened from my mother yesterday, it makes no sense. You heard from her, meaning she contacted you.
And then there's the listen without to mistake we mentioned earlier, but even worse is using to with hear. I heard to the news. Ouch. That one really stings the ears of a native speaker.
It really does. It's these tiny prepositions that act like the gatekeepers of fluency. If you can't get the to right, people stop listening to your brilliant ideas because they're too busy hearing your mistakes.
That's a harsh truth, Leo, but that's why we're here. We want our audience to be beyond the reach of those mistakes.
Well, we've covered the syntax and the cultural nuances. When we come back, we're going into the poetic side of these words, the idioms that make you sound like a native. And then it's time to see if our audience was actually listening with our final quiz. Don't go anywhere.
We are in the home stretch. Now, Leo, let's talk about the phrases that actually make someone sound like they've lived in London or New York for a decade, the idioms.
This is where hear and listen stop being verbs and start being metaphors. For example, hear it through the grapevine. It's such a poetic way of saying you received gossip or unofficial news.
I love that one. It implies that the information traveled through a tangled, organic web of people before reaching you. Then there's listen with half an ear. We've all been there, scrolling through our phones when someone is talking. You're physically hearing them, but your listening is only at 50% capacity.
Guilty as charged. On the more serious side, we have hear someone out. This is a sophisticated way of asking for patience. If I say, Aria, just hear me out, I'm asking you to suspend your judgment until I finish my entire explanation.
And on the flip side, we have listen to reason. This isn't about sound at all. It's about being logical. Thoughtfully, if someone is being stubborn, you might say, I tried to talk to him, but he just won't listen to reason. It means they're closed off to logical arguments.
One more crucial one. Play it by ear. This originally comes from music, learning a tune by hearing it rather than reading notes. Today we use it for planning. We don't have a schedule for the meeting, let's just play it by ear. It means being flexible and reacting to what you hear in the moment.
Okay, it's time to see if our audience was actually listening or just hearing our voices in the background. We have 5 challenging questions. I'll read the scenario, and Leo, you give us the breakdown.
I'm ready. Let's see how sharp our listeners are.
Professional. Question 1. You're in a meeting and the air conditioner is making a loud buzzing sound. Do you say, I am hearing a noise, or I hear a noise? Pause.
The answer is, I hear a noise. Remember, hear is a stative verb for a sensory experience. We avoid the continuous ing form here.
Professional. Question 2. You want to know if your friend got a text from their brother. Do you ask, did you listen to your brother yesterday? Or did you hear from your brother yesterday? Pause.
It's hear from. That specific phrasal verb means to receive a communication. Listen to would literally mean you were eavesdropping on him speaking.
Professional. Question 3. Fill in the blank. I sat by the ocean and blank the waves for an hour. Pause.
The correct word is listened to. Because it lasted for an hour and involved your focused attention on the rhythmic sound, it's an active process.
Professional. Question 4. Your boss is explaining a new policy and asks if you understand. You want to show empathy. Do you say, I listen to you, or I hear you? Pause.
In a professional or emotional context, I hear you is the winner. It means I acknowledge and understand your point.
Professional. Last one. You're telling a secret and say, listen, blank, me, carefully. What's the missing word? Pause.
It's 2. Never forget the bridge. Listen to me. If you missed that one, you need to go back to minute 8 of this broadcast.
Great job, Leo. And to our audience, how many did you get right? If you got 5 out of 5, you are officially moving into the masterclass of English speakers.
Language is about more than just words. It's about the intention behind them. When you choose between hear and listen, you are choosing how you interact with the world. One is a spectator, the other is a participant.
We hope this deep dive helped you clear the static. Thank you for joining us today on this first episode.
We'll be back tomorrow with another linguistic battle. Different words, same deep analysis.
I'm Aria.
And I'm Leo.
This is He versus She.
One language, 2 perspectives. Total mastery. See you tomorrow.